Hey gang! Today we will be talking about a potential cure for HIV. Well, at least a step in that direction. Together, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Duke Medicine, and Macrogenics have created the DART protein, which could potentially be a significant part of the shock and kill strategy that could eradicate HIV. Forever. But let's back up to the beginning. What is HIV? HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. This means that the immune system is under attack and cannot defend itself. So who is or can get affected with HIV? More than 1.2 million people in the United States are living with HIV. However, 12.8% of them are unaware. Racially speaking, blacks and African Americans are most affected by this disease. However, across the board, MSNs, or men who have sex with men, is the population most severely affected by HIV. So, how is HIV spread? The most common way that HIV is spread is through sexual contact. The second way is contact with infected blood. This can happen while sharing syringes during drug use, or perhaps if your open wound were to touch infected blood, or your open wound were to touch someone else's infected open wound. Lastly, a woman who is pregnant and has HIV can spread it to her baby, unfortunately. Okay, let's delve into what happens on a cellular level. And guys, take notes now because it's quite a lot. First is attachment. HIV requires attachment to the cell membrane through ligand receptor links. It binds to the CD4 and 7 transmembrane receptors. However, the virus tends to prefer CD4 receptors. So, tight attachment enables fusion with the cell membrane, and the contents of the virus is then emptied into the membrane. Included in these contents is RNA. The next step is to make the HIV RNA into DNA. For those of you who recall the central dogma, you realize that this process is going backwards. Instead of going from DNA to RNA, it's going from RNA to DNA. I know, wild. This process is done with an enzyme called reverse transcriptase. It transcribes the RNA into complementary DNA sequence. This part is also quite interesting and is the reason why HIV is so hard to treat. Sometimes the reverse transcriptase makes mistakes, so the DNA has slightly different properties. Not only this, but because the virus inserts itself into the DNA of the host cell, it is more or less invisible. We'll talk more about this later. It's also very hard to treat the very different types of DNA when the reverse transcriptase makes a mistake. Anyway, the next step is integration. Now we have DNA sequence for the HIV virus, which we'll refer to as the viral DNA. The viral DNA, with the help of an enzyme called integrase, I know, very creative, will be inserted into the DNA sequence of the host cell. Now, going in the right direction of the central dogma, this new DNA is then transcribed and becomes viral RNA. Translation then occurs and they become proteins. Lastly, viral RNA-associated proteins, I know, buzzwords, are packaged and released out of the host cell membrane and are now able to infect other cells. So, that was a lot. So let's recap. First, there's attachment and fusion of the HIV cell to the host cell membrane. Then, reverse transcription with the help of the enzyme reverse transcriptase. Then, so that means that the RNA is then becoming DNA. Then, transcription again. The transcription then it's integration. Then it's transcription again. Then, translation to proteins. And lastly, packaging. So, how does all the cellular stuff manifest itself on a physiological level? Well, you see, the symptoms of HIV are often flu-like. They include, typical flu-like symptoms like fever, body rash, sore throat, upset stomach and muscle pain, joint pains. So, what is the prognosis without treatment? Well, your immune system, because of HIV, becomes too damaged to defend itself against life-threatening infections and cancers without treatment. And cancers. Death is almost guaranteed. I know, that got dark really quick. So, now let's get into the treatment portion of the screencast, which it's all really about, actually. The DART, or the Dual Affinity Retargeting Protein, that's a mouthful, cannot cure HIV, but it can find more or less invisible virus cells and ferret them out in order to kill them. The virus is invisible because, like previously mentioned, it integrates itself with DNA of the host cell. The DART protein is designed to find these invisible cells, when it does, it binds the immune system's killer cells, also known as T cells, with the HIV cells. How does it do this? Well, the DART protein's antibodies are shaped like a Y. On one of its arms, it binds to the T cells, and its other binds to the HIV-infected cells. By putting those two things in contact, you can kill the HIV-infected cell and prevent it from making more copies of itself. Are there any risks to this seemingly perfect process? I mean, of course there are. The DART protein requires the immune system to turn itself on in order to attack any virus-infected cells. If this type of activity occurs often or is prolonged, the immune system can seriously harm the body. Okay, so what is the success rate, considering we're talking about the risk? Well, this treatment is still in the experimental state. However, during its trials, it has proven to be highly effective. What highly effective means has not been released. We have no numbers on this, actually. In the trials, however, lymphocytes were taken from patients on HIV therapy, which were then reinfected with different HIV subtypes. When the infected cells expressed viral strains, the DART protein facilitated CD8 killer T cells. This then killed the HIV-infected cells. Alright, so let's recap everything. HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. Then we have DART proteins. DART proteins look like a Y, and they bind killer T cells, or the immune system cells, to HIV-infected cells, and that contact kills the HIV-infected cells. Then, we found this out through experimentation, but those actual numbers aren't released. That's all we have for today, gang. Thank you for watching. See you guys tomorrow when we talk about how ducks can be homosexual necrophiliacs. Bye!